I'll start with the pig head on.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Tax Talk Live, broadcasting live on Facebook. Thank you for joining us again. I'm Jordan Bateman. I'm the BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and I'm joined, as always, by Paige MacPherson, our incredible Alberta Director. How you doing, Paige?
I'm doing well, thanks, Jordan. Yeah, happy to be here, and I think we have a very special guest today.
I know. Can you believe it? Like, only the best for us, folks. We are joined by Porky, the waste-hating pig, live and in the flesh, live from the Ottawa Bureau. Porky, how are you?
I'm doing very well. And,
Porky has such a sensible voice. He just, he sounds smart and it's funny. It's maybe not what I expected him to sound like.
It's not how
he
I
usually doesn't.
Porky.
Yeah, he usually doesn't speak, so I don't really have a voice for him.
Porky's more the exasperated mascot of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. But under the mask, our fantastic research director, Mr. Jeff Bowes. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing very well, and it usually is me underneath that mask.
Yes.
Basically, whenever you see it, including in the book here, that's definitely me.
Oh my! You've been on the cover of a popular piece of nonfiction in the Dominion of Canada. Congratulations! No, Porky the Waste-Hater Pig. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at Porky the Waste-Hater. But he is our mascot, and we bring him out every year for the Teddy Waste Awards and then some other special events through the year as we see fit. But very quickly, happy to have you all joining us on Tax Talk. Just so you know, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to only three things: lower taxes, less waste, more government accountability. That's what drives all the communications, research, and advocacy work we do. And lots of ways for you all to connect with us. You can tweet me at Jordan Bateman. You can treat Paige as well if you want to. Send her stuff at Paige MacP. And Jeff, I think you're at JBose2, correct?
Yes.
Yes. You're so much better than at JBose1. You don't want to follow that guy. And be sure to visit our website at taxpayer.com to see what we're working on. And then this is also available as an audio podcast afterwards in the Tax Talk feed. Just search for it on iTunes. All right. So, guys, want to talk about what's new? I have some good news on what's new for once. Good news for taxpayers. So maybe I can go first.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, this is the first time we've talked since the BC budget, and I'm pleased to announce that we managed to convince the BC government to cut taxes by $1 billion in British Columbia in that budget, and commit to actually getting rid of our medical services premium tax, which is like a separate health premium, separate from the income tax system. People like me get bills in the mail every single month, $150 a month for my family. It's a straight tax. And we've been fighting this thing for years and years and years. And finally, like rocking the pot machine back and forth before you can tip it over, we finally tipped the finance minister over. And he announced in the budget lockup February 22nd that he was going to kill that MSP, cut in half, with a view to getting rid of it altogether in the coming year. So it's a tremendous victory for the CTF. And one we actually got a lot of credit for with the media because we had put so much public pressure on. So victory lap time for Jordan here in British Columbia. All right, Paige, Alberta used to have a health premium, and Scott Hennig led the fight against that. So that was good. So in fact, it was that work in Alberta that inspired us in BC to push through on it. You guys got anything new? Anything exciting?
We have the federal budget coming up fairly soon on March 22nd. We're kind of expecting it earlier, but it was delayed until then. no one's entirely sure why, but there's been some indications that it's to wait for the Trump administration to do something, but also a rumor out there that they delayed it because they had intended to tax healthcare benefits and then decided not to. I don't know that that's true, but it is a rumor that people are spreading, including me now. But probably do expect to see some tax credits to be eliminated, but not that one. And it's being touted as a innovation budget, so that means corporate welfare. I don't know what else it could possibly mean. But they are also trying to manage expectations of the budget. So from the Liberals' perspective, I think that means that there won't be actually that much spending increases because that's what they want to do, and if they're managing expectations, that might be moderately good for us.
Mm-hmm. It's actually where the Liberals could get into some trouble, because if they don't deliver on some of the outlandish promises in the first budget, the spending escalators, even if they ratcheted that down by a small amount, people will start setting their hair on fire and calling it cuts, which of course is the game the Liberals played with the Harper Conservatives for such a long time.
Yeah, definitely. And they, in their first chance during their economic update, they ramped up spending yet again. So they're pushing it to the limits. But then there's also been some criticism that this infrastructure spending that they've claimed to be doing isn't actually happening. And to the extent that means they're spending less, that might be good. But it's not entirely clear what their priorities are or how able they are to take action on them.
Well, the infrastructure side depends on provincial and municipal participation, a lot of it. And I can tell you that in the BC budget, there was an increase in capital debt, so borrowing for infrastructure projects. And the finance minister drew a direct line and said, look, Ottawa's borrowing to build these things and requiring us to commit as well. So he kind of pinned the blame for growing debt in BC on the Trudeau government, which I found an interesting tack. And it seemed to kind of let him off the hook with the media, to be honest.
All right. You guys can see me and hear me, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I've been having weird internet problems, and so I was sort of in and out of that conversation.
It's the Russian government trying to stop you, Paige.
It's probably Putin. Yeah, it usually is.
Yeah.
So I have a what's new. I actually have, so I have two what's news. So we were talking about something fun right before the podcast started that we can talk about. Maybe we can finish our what's new segment with that. But there is a kind of an interesting what's new out of Alberta. And so I don't know if our viewers are familiar with the town of Lloydminster, which is sort of a border town between Saskatchewan and Alberta. And for years, gas stations wanted to situate themselves on the Alberta side of town because they didn't have as high taxes. There was no sales tax. And so it was just like a better place to be on that side of the border if you're doing business, especially if you are doing your gas station or like a truck wash or something like that. So now that the carbon tax has come into place, now it's no longer competitive to be on the Alberta side. It's actually better to be on the Saskatchewan side. And so all these gas stations, which are situated on the Alberta side, are feeling pretty screwed over because they've got an over 4 cents a liter carbon tax that they're hit with, that's upping their prices. Businesses like truck washes are facing like over $10,000 in increased costs. And the government says, well, you got a small business tax cut and that'll save them maybe $1,000 or something like that. So it's not evening out for businesses on the Alberta side. So the Alberta government sees this. Obviously, it's an issue and decides, what can we do about this? We're going to basically implement a boutique tax credit to businesses on the Alberta side of Lloydminster. So they're balancing it out by giving out these, rebates or tax credits. But I just think it's a really interesting story because it's kind of like a microcosm. It's like this small scale example of the competitiveness that the carbon tax poses for any province that has it, right? Because there are go just outside of Lloydminster to the next town over on either side, and they're still going to have that same competitiveness problem, right? And it goes and it goes. So I thought that is interesting that we kind of have this really small scale example of just how hard it hits when the carbon tax goes in one jurisdiction but not another.
Yeah, that it actually mirrors something that happens in Langley, where I live in the Lower Mainland, where the boundary between the TransLink transit tax, gas tax, is the border between Langley and Abbotsford. And I can tell you that there is not a gas station within a mile and a half on the Langley side of that border, because gas taxes here are about 49 cents a litre. You get across that border into Abbotsford, gas taxes are 37 cents a litre. So guess what? Usually 8 to 10 cents of that 12-cent difference is passed along to consumers. So all along, clustered along the border on the Abbotsford side, are all these gas stations. Same thing north of the Fraser River, but people don't build them on the eastern side or on the western side of that border because the higher tax regime. So look, taxes matter. I mean, that is one of the things that they are correct about with the carbon tax, right? The carbon tax does force some changes in behavior, forces you to look at different things. That high tax regime, whether it's gas tax, I would call the transit tax in BC an extra carbon tax. I mean, it's the same, exactly the same tax. It does force changes in behavior. What it does is it forces you to drive a mile and a half extra to Abbotsford to save 10 cents a litre.
Right. And I mean, yeah, you're right. It can be any tax, because actually before this happened, the Saskatchewan government had at times introduced the same kind of thing for businesses on their side, because it was so much more competitive to do business in Alberta. And now that advantage is completely gone. And now Saskatchewan can, remove those rebates, and it's still going to be better, or at least, for some businesses even. So it's pretty interesting. And you can think about it on a provincial level. You can think about it on a national level, especially in the lower mainland of BC. Jordan, I know that it's a thing that some people will even drive across the border to the U.S. to fill up their tanks. So, I mean, the competitiveness problem exists in many different ways.
Well, and this is one of the flaws of, not to get into conservative leadership politics, but, I noticed, No Hope candidate Rick Peterson floating the idea of, cutting income tax substantially and instead increasing GST by 4 to 6 points. Well, 80% of the Canadian population lives within an hour of the U.S. border. So, if they raise our GST by 6 percentage points, where will people go to purchase goods? They'll cross the border. And so then you're talking about enforcement and tariffs and all those things that violate other conservative principles of mobility and free trade and things like that. So, these tax issues matter. Tax regimes matter. And, we need more focus from government on that kind of competitiveness. But I imagine Brad Wall is, strutting like a peacock through the streets of Lloydminster, Saskatchewan these days, with his lower tax regime than the nefarious Notley next door. And then, Paige, you had a funny one as well, which I think we should talk about, because this is like sort of inside baseball, but it'll give people a glimpse into the life of a CTF director.
Yeah, definitely. So this is like a pundit or anybody who comments in media. This is like a worst nightmare when you work from home, at least anybody who has kids. So on BBC One, they're, pretty widely watched news station out of the UK. There's an assistant professor talking about, I can't remember what it was, something South Korea or something, an important issue, not something light and fluffy. And he's doing this interview, and in the interview, his young son comes into the room behind him, opens the door to his office, comes in, and so they resolve this, and then after that, so what happens next? The little baby comes, or
yep,
and then the nanny
one of those little walkers.
Yeah, right. And then the nanny frantically comes in, tries to resolve the situation, all happening in the background. I just set up like this, where, I'm in my home office now. This is where I do interviews when I'm on Skype or whatever. So it really is like, it's hilarious. I love it because live TV is so awesome. And having worked in live television, crazy stuff happens all the time. And it's kind of the beauty of it. It's really awesome. And it's how you roll with the punches. But it really is like a pundit's worst nightmare that this is going to happen in behind them.
Yeah, so I have 3 kids and a Yorkshire Terrier, and it's like, going to keep me up at nights now, this video clip. I haven't laughed, videos go viral, every day on the internet. I have not laughed at an internet video like that in a long time. And it was just, kind of hit home for me. I know for Aaron Woodrick, our federal director, 3 kids at home. Todd McKay, I mean, heaven's sakes, he's got 4. That's 33% more than I do. I don't know how he does it. But that is the worst nightmare for those of us blessed enough to have a home office where we can do interviews from. But
Yeah.
I guess we'll all be installing locks on the doors as a response.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't crate your kids like you can crate your dog. Because I had that happen once with my dog. And then now when I do interviews, I put her in the crate. But I've heard that's sort of taboo with kids, something you don't really want to do.
Yeah, you can't crate children at that age. They frown upon that in most Canadian provinces. Although Alberta, Jeff, you might be okay in Alberta. You don't know. We're not there. It might be culturally acceptable. I'm just kidding. All right, well, let's get to the main meat of today's talk. We're going to talk about the Teddy Waste Awards. We're going to run through the winners and a couple of our favorite nominees and who won, who we thought could have won, and have a good time with that. But just to kind of lay the foundation, the Teddy Waste Awards, this is like the signature event for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. It's our Super Bowl. This is what we get probably most media attention in any single day event that we do all year. It's hosted in Ottawa by our federal director and Porky the Waste Hater. They take the Charles Lynch Theatre Press Gallery in Ottawa, and they list out the winners. It's a heck of a lot of fun. It gets us media across the country, and it's named for a guy named Ted Weatherill, who was a bureaucrat 18 or 19 years ago, who famously expensed like tons of lunches, tons of travel. One of the first like massive public spending scandals as far as individuals with a waste issue. I actually met a guy who worked with Ted Weatherill, and he said the public accounts are only the tip of the iceberg with that guy. So it's a well-named award, the Teddy Waste Award, and we thank Ted Weatherill for inadvertently being remembered every year for this. But Jeff, maybe tell us this year, maybe run us through the winners and tell us a little bit about them.
Yeah. So our big winner of the year gets this beautiful trophy. Was the government of Ontario for their disastrous electricity policies. Like getting into the specifics, it's there's too much there. They've made the wrong decisions every year for decades. And so it's the Green Energy Act, it's the carbon tax, it's just decisions about gas plants. What kind of power to build. Like they chose to run the electrical system based on ideology rather than what the experts were telling them they needed to do. And then we've ended up with this huge disaster here in Ontario of sky high electricity prices. And it's certainly a well-deserved award to the government of Ontario.
My advice to other power agencies out there, BC Hydro included, is the George Costanza rule. Whatever Ontario is doing, do the opposite. Whatever Ontario thinks is the right thing to do, the opposite is probably the correct thing. I mean, you're right. Like the list of bungles by these guys, right down to Tesla, and I got another award, right down to like $14,000 grants for people, millionaires buying Teslas. I mean, the Norwegian wood chip plant. I mean, like just crazy. Yeah. You just can't, one of these scandals is bad enough, and they've got 7 or 8 of them.
Yeah,
and you might want to tell Notley, the Premier of Alberta, that George Costanza rule, we seem to be sort of copying Ontario now, like it's going out of style. Yeah.
And this was all to make an electrical system that was already incredibly greener. It's not as though Ontario had this horribly polluting system. It was mostly nuclear and hydroelectricity. Mm-hmm. Like it was already not emitting all this carbon dioxide. And then they decided, no, it needs to be better at huge expense. And it's not better. It was all piles of money for nothing.
Mm-hmm. Although they just showed a lot of green corporate welfare. So maybe if you're one of those,
like it. I mean, if you are installing windmills or solar panels, you won, but everyone else lost.
Yeah. So when we gave, I didn't actually follow this closely. Do you guys know what kind of reaction we got in Ontario when we gave out this award? I mean, I was in Ottawa, but I wonder how it did for Christine.
I think it was a pretty big day for her. This electricity issue is it's huge in Ontario. It's it's the biggest issue out there. It's also one of the toughest issues out there because it's such a disaster that there's no solution. And since then, Kathleen Wynne has announced a kind of a restructuring of the finances of electricity production, which will apparently lower rates by 25%, which include some other cuts she's already done. But that's by increasing the finance terms of the loans, and that will just increase. Yeah, so well, it increases the debt, and it'll keep electricity prices higher for longer. It's essentially like remortgaging your house for an extra 10 years. You didn't just save money, you spent more money to remortgage it. Like, it's just you're paying less now, but you're going to be paying even more later.
Okay, so is this policy reaction better or worse than when Kathleen Wynne launched a petition against high hydro rates that were caused by her government? Like, that was just one of the funniest things I've ever seen a politician do. Like, who are you petitioning? Are you petitioning yourself? Like,
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they were legitimate. Yes, like, please sign my petition against me. Like, it's the weirdest thing that's a strange political stunt.
Yeah. And
What do you say after that? Like, and Ontario is contributing some pretty concerning terms to the political lexicon now in Canada. Energy poverty was a term we didn't use in Canada until now in Ontario. Heat or eat is a phrase that you never heard in Canada until until Kathleen Wynne and Dalton. Am I getting the right? Am I getting the right McGuinty? Dalton McGuinty bungled all these electricity files. Just mind-boggling. And look, we need to remember, it's not like Canada is running thousands of coal plants and polluting the atmosphere. We rely greatly on hydroelectric power, cleanest energy source possible. Like, this is, it boggles my mind that all this is caused by trying to solve a problem that actually doesn't exist. And certainly she and the Ontario government well deserved this Lifetime Achievement Award for the way they've bungled this file.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And of course, the Ontario government got another award in the provincial category for their subsidies to electric vehicles, which is an absurd program that subsidizes luxury cars for people, including the Porsche Spyder 918, which is a car that costs almost $900,000. But after this was revealed, they ended that subsidy and limited the subsidy for cars under $150,000 to $3,000. So that the big car in that category would be the Tesla Model S. But then recently they kind of reversed themselves on that after Tesla had recently hired a lobbyist to lobby the Ontario government. And now I forget exactly how much you can get. You can get $14,000 to buy a car that is very precisely priced at around $150,000.
Oh, perfect. Lobbyists, right? Like, this to me is just the power of lobbyists. Obviously, Tesla wanted that grant or that ability, and so they, probably paid some people to go to work on the energy minister and whoever else. And this is the horrible public policy we get in return.
It's so silly because, also I don't know. It's just so silly because whose behavior are you changing? Like, this is not the working man's car. He's not like, well, I had $130,000, but getting to that 150 mark is a real challenge for me. Like,
buy a
Lamborghini. It's not a discussion a lot of people have.
Do I buy the Lamborghini or do I buy the Porsche Spyder? Oh, a $14,000 credit on my $900,000 car. Porsche Spyder it is, right? Like, and by the way, if I had $1 million to buy a car, I would buy the 1960s Batmobile, just so everyone knows. That would be clear. Okay. And I don't need a provincial, I wouldn't ask for provincial money to do
it. The Porsche Spyder is a very nice car. So
yeah, you think?
I might go for that.
I'm trying to think how many years of my life I'm going to have to work in order to get a Porsche Spyder going. That would be terrible. That was the provincial winner, right?
Yeah, that was a provincial winner. We had some other good ones, including what else do we have?
Okay, my favorite, and I gotta say it. I lobbied for this one, but I totally understand the Ontario winning one. But the idea that Nova Scotia taxpayers spent almost $33 million to upgrade a ferry dock. $33 million to upgrade a ferry parking and dock is bad enough. This ferry dock was actually in Portland, Maine. was even in Nova Scotia. And, it carries less than, or carries something like 300 people a week. And they're spending $33 million to upgrade a main ferry dock. Who made that decision?
Yeah, and that's just like the tip of the iceberg of the subsidies on this ferry. It's a ferry that's just not economical. It's constantly subsidized. There was an estimate from Tourism Nova Scotia that over 3 years of the ferry existing, which I think was a previous iteration of the ferry, but it's basically the same thing. The people coming to Nova Scotia had spent $52 million over the 3 years, and the government had spent $62.8 million on subsidies.
Yeah, that's a disastrous.
And let's be clear, people spent that much. That's not how much actually came back to the provincial treasury. It's actually return on investment. Yeah. But oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And there were other great ones. A lot of them from Quebec. In Montreal, they were going to spend $127,000 per concrete stump statue that was going to be put in Montreal Park that everyone thought was ugly. And it was for the 375th anniversary of the city, and no one could understand what the connection was with the anniversary. So eventually they decided to put plaques on them that would explain certain, historical things. Who knows? It's a horrible idea. It's been criticized, but it appears to be going forward nevertheless.
So it just looks like cut down trees, just tree stumps.
Yeah, well, they're concrete tree stumps, and they don't even look nice at all. I think they're theoretically meant to be seats, I guess, but I don't know.
You say people are stumped by this expenditure.
Generally, tree stumps are not a thing of beauty that you kind of want to get rid of them. But who am I? I don't know. Maybe I don't know art.
You don't know art.
And there was also out of Quebec, there was an employee, a liberal appointee who, when the PQ government came into power, got kind of sidelined and then just didn't show up to work. But she didn't lose her job, and she just kept collecting her salary of $180,000 and just kind of was on leave for years.
Must be nice.
Yeah, that sounds pretty sweet.
Nice gig if you can get it.
Yeah, if they're still hiring.
Who was our federal winner? I think it wasn't the CCRA finally took it home.
So the federal winner was for the CRA for paying over $500,000 for an employee to move from Richmond Hill, Ontario to Belleville, Ontario.
Which is not far.
It's not far. It's going from a place where houses are expensive to a place where houses are cheaper. There's no reason for this to cost a lot, but what it was price protection and real estate fees. So the price protection was over $300,000. So in this case, it was an executive level employee, and they can get up to 10% price protection. So if their house sells for less than it's valued at, then they can get that money from their employer, from taxpayers. So in this case, that was over $300,000. And then the real estate fees were, I forget exactly, $160,000. So based on that, we can assume that the house was worth $3.4 million.
A worthwhile use of tax dollars. Yeah, I know they're
just struggling to get by. Yeah, unbelievable.
They suffer. Yeah. Any other good federal nominees?
We also had, there was
pork for pork, man.
Pork for pork, which where the government gave Maple Leaf Foods $500,000 to expand a bacon factory, basically, which is especially ridiculous because Maple Leaf Foods, the company they gave the money to, has a cash pile of over $400 million. They wouldn't have needed even to take a loan. They just have $400 million sitting there with, they would have need to figure out something to do with it. And this would have been a great thing to do with it, to build their own factory rather than get the government to pay for it.
Yes.
I just love that one because it is pork for pork.
Yeah. I understand Porky did not like that one.
Porky did not like it.
No, he was
offensive.
I like Christmas Light Show. Can we talk about Christmas Light Show?
Yeah, so on Parliament Hill here, they have this this light show every winter. There's all tons of Christmas lights everywhere. They have this like big projector that projects like videos onto the Parliament building. Like it's really nice. You might as well go. It's free. Everybody loves it. But they decided they need to spend $15,000 to do a survey of people to see if they liked it. And surprise, surprise, 98% of people recommended the event to their friends and family.
98% of people can't agree in Canada that the sky is blue. Okay, free light show, free Christmas lights at the Parliament Hill, of course, no problems at all.
They enjoy the Christmas lights, the survey says. Oh, I just think that's hilarious. All right, should we talk about municipal?
Yeah, let's talk about municipal.
Sure.
I
think Jordan can talk about the winner here.
Yes. So the municipal winner this year was the city of Victoria. So guys, there's this 93-year-old bridge in Victoria called the Johnson Street Bridge, also known as the Blue Bridge. 93 years. Look, if we could get 93 years out of every piece of government infrastructure ever built, I think we'd all be very happy. But it does need either replacement or it needs some major renovations. City of Victoria decided that they were going to build a new bridge. They spent they budgeted $66 million for it. It turns out now it's well over $105 million. It is now 3 years late. This bridge span is 100 meters, so Usain Bolt could run it in 9.5 seconds, but it's taking almost a decade for the City of Victoria dolts to actually make this thing happen. They've had all sorts of problems. They wrote a bad contract. Terrible contract. They weren't watching the numbers early on. They ordered steel from a Chinese factory. It wasn't up to snuff. Then they went there to complain to the Chinese factory and completely offended these people because they didn't understand the way the business culture works and how to interact with people. And so, just like problem after problem after problem on this bridge. And the great thing is we named it the winner, and partly to send a little warning shot to all these other infrastructure projects that the Trudeau government wants to go into hock for. Like, look, you've got to, this is a cautionary tale. You've got to make sure that, if you're going to spend money, contracts are rock solid. The risk is being transferred to the contractor, not on taxpayers, things like that. All things these guys failed at. And the mayor of Victoria said, yeah, they're right. We deserve this award, and we should have done better, and we are going to do better in the future. And, I accept this award, which I believe is a first in the 19-year history of the Teddy Waste Awards. We've never actually had a politician or bureaucrat agree with us that they deserved it. So kudos to the city of Victoria for that. And the rest of you municipalities out there, pay attention. Don't do what Victoria did on this.
Yeah, that's a good one.
A well-deserving winner.
Yeah. Can we also talk about the strip club?
Yeah. So this gave the bridge some tough competition. In Richmond County, Nova Scotia, they had a CAO named Warren Olson, who had a series of questionable expenses, and the most, maybe not the most serious, but the most interesting of which were $582 in expenses at 2 Houston strip clubs.
He didn't say they were strip clubs, right? He just put the name of them, but when you Google the name, turns out
there it is. So he'd expensed these as I believe meals, and he was having a great time in Houston because he also had a $429 limousine ride, and a lot of his other expenses were questionable as well. He'd often expense alcohol, double dip on meals, where he would claim a per diem for 3 meals in a day, and then also expense meals in that same day, which was apparently a common practice in the county. Everybody was doing it, and all of this was revealed because of a forensic audit that was done after people in the county kind of got some idea that something was wrong and started complaining until finally a forensic audit was done, and we learned all this. But after reading that forensic audit, you realize that there could be far more here, because what they found was, in a lot of cases, there wasn't much documentation for the expenses, and that when they found out there was going to be an audit, they started adding documentation to expenses. It started making notes of what those things were, but well after the fact. And the kicker of all things that I, for some reason, skipped over up to this point, Warren Olson was responsible for approving his own expenses. So that is why no one was able to catch this, because it was him and him alone.
Yeah.
That's important because when we were doing the Teddies, I did a radio show in Edmonton, and the host asked me, this is all hilarious, but why do you guys actually do this? Like, what policy objectives do you actually want to come out of this? And I think it's stuff like that. Like, we shouldn't have people who are approving their own expenses. I mean, one of our other Teddy nominees was the city manager in Edmonton, who basically spent most of his time on the job traveling, taking lavish trips to other places outside of Edmonton, while projects and affairs in Edmonton were just crumbling, because he was approving all of his own expenses and approving this. And there needs to be oversight, right?
Yeah. And some of the excuse here is often, oh, well, I'm the top person in the organization, but no, you're not. The mayor and the city councilors are the top of this organization, and they can clearly look at it. And and the other simple solution is just to post all of your expenses online, and then it's just out there, and then people can see it, and the public can make their own judgment of how reasonable it was.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, once they post it online, it becomes easy for organizations like ours. For anybody who's watching this and doesn't know, we've got some Twitter accounts, for example, at Alberta Expenses, that just tweets out in real time the receipts. So sometimes, I'm monitoring it. Sometimes people who are on Twitter see it and send it to me and say, this looks egregious or whatever. And it just makes it so much easier for the public to hold these people accountable, because it's right there in front of you.
Yeah. And this is what we also advocate for our members of parliament. They disclose some details about their expenses, but it's really just, I spent this much on hospitality and this much on that. What would really give us the actual information about what they're spending our taxpayer dollars on is receipts. Just scan the receipt and post it online. It seems simple, but so far they've refused to do it.
Mm-hmm. So I have a kind of a happy Teddy story. And it was one of our provincial nominees in Alberta, it was a health bureaucrat, Diamond Maryland. She's the panel chair of the Alberta Mental Health Review Panel for Calgary and South. And she was taking a lot of town cars. So just to clarify, town cars are like, when you go to the airport, you can take a cab, or you can pay more and take like one of those black nice, it looks like a short limo. So that's what the town car was. And she was taking these every time she had to drive to a hearing in a town close by. And I mean really close by. Like the longest these trips would ever be were like 3 hours or less. Generally they were like an hour and a half or an hour and 15 minutes. And she would take the town car and basically have it for the whole day, wait for her and sometimes colleagues, and then go back. In 1 year, she spent $27,000 on town cars. So really just absurd. The way that we found this was through that Alberta Expenses Twitter account. We're seeing the receipts come in real time, and then you can look her up and see like, wow, this is an issue. We reached out to Alberta Health about it. They said, you're right. I mean, this seems, well, first they tried to tell me like, well, she's retired, so she doesn't want to drive herself in case she gets tired. And I thought that was like a weird excuse, because it's like a chair a mental health panel. She's probably good. And she's going with colleagues in many cases, so I'm sure they can carpool, or, there's buses and shuttles between these locations as well. So they said, okay, fine, we're going to issue a directive to all the bureaucrats in Alberta Health, don't take town cars, drive when you can, basically. We said, great. But then we continued to monitor her expenses and see that she was still racking up thousands upon thousands of dollars. A lot of these trips were over $1,000 each. And saying this is just, crazy. So then the media started to catch on. We continued to push, and eventually the health minister herself in Alberta basically gave them a kick in the butt and said, you can't be doing this anymore. There will be no more town car usage. And so there's this cool cool little feature that was done in the Calgary Sun, as you can see there. So just some things that, credit our organization for the work on this, and saying, a ministerial order is as close as you can get to your boss kicking your behind. And saying, the next time a taxpayer watchdog group points to public money being thrown away, the province need only utter a single word: stop. So really good outcome. We pushed this. We gave a Teddy Award for the most luxurious car travel, and at the end of the day, they stopped this practice. So those are exactly the outcomes that we want to see.
That's exactly why we do Teddy Waste Awards. I mean, we do Teddy Waste Awards to bring attention to this, to make people who aren't nominated think twice before they do stupid things, to hold the people to account who are doing the stupid things, and to force the policy changes that are necessary. I mean, this is how we got rid of the householder mail outs. We gave an award to that. It's how we got MP pension reform. We gave an award to that. It's how part of the reason we defeated the TransLink sales tax in the Lower Mainland here, because we gave a lifetime award for that. These things work. And one of the great things I love about the Teddy Waste Awards is you look through them and there are relatively few repeat nominees. I mean, these guys get nominated once and either there's a policy change or they change their practice. And the No Meat Committee in Alberta, another great example. So these things become legends among the us CTFers for a reason. And it's why that we're always working so hard on the Teddy Waste Awards, because it might be the single best tool we have, certainly in a one-day event, to actually to get real substantive change for taxpayers.
Exactly. Plus, it's hilarious, and Porky gets his time to shine.
Yes. Plus, Jeff gets to dress up as Porky, and that's always great.
That's real victory.
Paige, any comments in the thread here we need to talk about?
So, I mean, there's an interesting debate in our comments right now going on about taxes and taxes in general, and the need for groups like ours, which is good. But one person saying Wynne and Trudeau and Notley should be top contenders for the Teddy Awards. As you might have heard, the Ontario Liberal government did win our Lifetime Achievement Award for completely bungling the electricity file and the energy file in that province. So, we agree with you. I mean, there's nothing, I don't think there's any real other comments. There's just sort of an interesting little discussion going on here. So happy we could facilitate that.
Yes. Well, let's talk about our waste of the week and maybe an early contender for a 2018 Teddy Waste Award. So I FOI'd some documents from the British Columbia Lottery Corp. Every year they do a fancy conference called New Horizons in Responsible Gaming. And really it's become a schmooze and booze fest for people from around North America in the gambling industry to come to Vancouver and get wined and dined by the BC Lotto Corp and listen to a few speakers talk about gaming addiction and ethics in gambling. The problem is we've just finished up, I think, the the fifth year of the conference. The first year of the conference, they lost about $55,000, the BC Lottery Corp, which of course is taxpayer money. The second year, they lost about $120,000. And the third year, which I've just received the FOI documents on, this is last year's, they lost $208,000 on this conference. They only had 85 people pay to go, which means almost a $2,500 per head subsidy for these folks at the conference. They spent unbelievable amounts of money, $55,000 on fancy food, sushi bars, steak stations, craft beer, wine, stuff like that. They spent $7,000 on a conference phone app purposefully designed just for this event for all 85 registrants. They had a $750 photo booth there for a couple hours so that you could, take your professional friends into the photo booth and dress up crazy and always remember this important trip to Vancouver. It's just become a complete gong show. Over the 3 years, they've lost $400,000. This year's just wrapped up. Margaret Trudeau was the keynote speaker, which is just ridiculous for an ethics and gaming conference. If her name was Margaret Smith, she would never have been brought in, but, because she is the Prime Minister's mother, she was a keynote speaker. Anyways, BCLC claims that they've lost probably $140,000 on this year's. I will FOI those documents to find out if they're telling the truth. But even at that number, that's $550,000 taxpayers have subsidized this conference over 4 years. So we're pushing for this thing just to be canceled. The funny thing is, it used to be held in the Atlantic provinces. There's like an Atlantic Lottery Commission. They actually stopped doing the conference because it was losing money, but apparently British Columbia was more than happy to rush in with the big dough. So that is our waste of the week.
Much like luxury vehicles and Porsche Spyders, steak and sushi and whining and dining and fancy photo booths are exactly what taxpayers want to be spending their money on.
Yeah, it's not a good look for a corporation or for a province where problem gambler numbers are going up, and frontline groups are really struggling to keep up with the demand for counseling and services. And you do wonder what $500,000 into those frontline services would mean. Chances are probably a lot more for these problem gamers than the schmooze and booze fest that goes on here. But there you go.
Good point.
Well, that's it for this episode of Tax Talk from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Be sure to follow Paige on Twitter at Paige MacP. Follow me at Jordan Bateman. Follow Jeff at JBose2. If you're listening to this on iTunes, please subscribe and give us a good rating. And if you've watched us on Facebook Live, please click like. All right. Thanks for doing this. You can check out all our work at taxpayer.com. And we'll be back next week with another Tax Talk. Thanks, everybody.